underneath each bed, and that saves them a lot of room.
Yeah, we got,
As long as it is the same font as your
Rhonda went there.
classified.
We bought a used set bunk bed.
States change state law, then we could like publish it.
Yeah, the beds are already in there and everything. So they'll have a little dresser, a desk, and the bed. But like I said, they'll raise the beds up high, so you put the desk underneath it and save a lot of room that way. So.
Oh, sometimes there's a paper where one full 2 or 3 pages, and that's all advertising they're charging. Yep.
And so that's why we've never got a change that we could put it online.
If you write a letter, that's another letter I'd be happy to sign.
Yeah. Hey, we have to follow state statute on that. Yeah.
That's what I was gonna say. Usually, it's the way to get that is not letters from
Yeah.
bureaucrats like us, but it's from talking to
Your state,
legislators,
yeah.
state reps, or that's the most important thing to do if we want to. And that's what the league tries to get, elected officials talking to elected officials because they just see us as you don't like the
Here we
tax
are.
lid and
I'm going to get us started here, sorry, because it is 6:31, and have our agenda in front of us, and we're going to do the final budget questions, and need to talk about bulk water agreement, which I think is something Councilmember Hawes kind of brought up recently. We want to talk about policy for allowing clergy members to come in and pray over our meetings, common consumption areas, and I want to talk a little bit to us with all of you about marketing. And then under other, I want to talk about a phone call I got from a brand new business owner here that I think some of you have already received too, involving snakes and alligators. Yeah. So, but for that, let's, I know we've gone through the budget. This will be our 3rd workshop, and it's officially published, so this is kind of our time. If there's any last things, any changes, additions, deletions, subtractions, now would be the time to kind of talk about that. And if there's anything else you want to add, Ted, I would.
Yeah, and I just included, this is basically what the state budget is, what you're going to sign next week. Is what is made up on this. It's a little different, so if you have any questions, let me know as the next week or so comes. All the amounts are right. It's just they're presented in a different way in here, so I don't want you guys to get confused. Everything that's on our working budget is what's in our state budget. So I don't want anybody to get confused, but I did want to get you at least an advance copy before you sign something. Unless we don't have any changes, I'll probably double check all my numbers in this, and this will be the draft that you'll see next week.
So this column, budget authority for expenditures, this is an expense column, or is this a revenue column?
That is an expense column. Now, why the general is so high, of course, we're not going to be spending that much. What you want to do is turn to page 7. And it'll be 7A, I guess.
Okay.
Actually, 7B, or 7 straight, yeah, sorry. To start it off, so the state says we're going to set your mill rate based on need, I guess, or based on how much revenue. So you put in how much expenditures you have that generates the ad valorem tax line. See how it's X'd out? If not, the city will put in an amount of expenditures to maintain its mill levy, and that's how you kind of maintain your mill levy. And then if you turn to 7A, you'll see the cash forward line, and that's the cash forward that's going to the next year. So we're not spending $8 million. We're actually only spending $5.8 million, at least in our operating budget now. But on the state budget, you have to set your expenditures first so you can set your mill levy. So that's why it shows in that. Okay. The reason you might ask, well, shouldn't the cash forward line be what our ending balance is on this sheet? it is. The two things that the state budget includes that my worksheet doesn't include is it takes 47,000 and kind of holds it as a delinquent comp rate. That's part of it, and then the other 300 was what I talked to you guys last week about. Is I usually put 300,000 in our transfer out line as a contingency, just in case we need extra authority to cover debt service in one given year. My predecessor did it like that. She is very smart in doing that, because if something happens, maybe I had a call, maybe a group of people aren't paying their specials, or there could be a million reasons why we don't maybe anticipate that revenue. We don't have to come back, amend the budget, put a thing in the paper, and I can just come to you and say, hey, we're short $20,000. We're just going to use that contingency fund for it. That's kind of how, and that's the most confusing part about the state budget. I'm sorry if that doesn't come as clear as it is, but that's
It's very clear.
I try to make it as simple as possible. Every other fund should be exactly the same as in here, other than the general. The general is the one that is set by a mill levy. Most cities you'll see mill levies in bond and interest and library, and Bel Aire is fortunate enough to let's just do one mill levy, go into the general and transfer out for the bond and interest fund. So ours is actually probably more simple than most cities our size.
Can you explain on page 1, the first line, it says budget authority for expenditures. That's 8.3 million. The budget that we've looked at has expenditures at 5.8 million, I guess. Why?
So that's the ending balance is included in that. So with the state, you have to include your ending balance, which is a cash forward, meaning it's not a planned expenditure, but it's a cash forward.
It's our expenditures plus our savings.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is. Yeah.
Not that we actually plan to spend.
No, it's just
questions, or if not, we'll go ahead and have this on our next agenda to approve. And I congratulate all of you on making it through your first budget. And seeing all of that. And Ted, again, thank you for the presentations and all of this stuff. But just, and like I explained at the council meeting, so now that it's been published, once we can make changes, but I'd like us to discuss them now so there's no surprises at the council meeting. And then once we approve it, we can lower it, but we can't raise it. So we can't add anything to an item. But
and one of I think the best things about this budget, and I'm most excited about this budget, is a lot of it's in the capital improvement fund, which is basically budgeting every year, or you guys are going to continue to budget because you're going to have that fund for projects and different things like that. We didn't have to decide every major project in a matter of 2 months for the whole next year. You're going to have all the next 12 months, 18 months to decide exactly what you want. So I appreciate it.
I do appreciate the summary that you put together. Thank you for emailing it to me. I could not see that screen the other day. I mean, I could see the screen, but I couldn't see any detail like that at all. It was just a blur. So, but that's all right. I appreciate you sending it to me. Thank you.
all right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Here you go.
We will move on to bulk water agreement for some of the new developments being built. And
Yes,
talk
so
about that.
it's ironic that Councilmember Hawes and myself both were approached from separate developers at separate times about the water. And so what we're hearing is that new developments go in and they have 30 lots and they have no one paying HOA dues, or they put in a couple houses, something like that. And then, of course, a lot of selling, if you drive around the new developments, a lot of what they do to sell that is to put in medians and plantings and all kinds of things to make it look very attractive. And of course, they have to pay for those to water all that grass and the entryways and things like that. So that was a concern that they had as a developer standpoint, is they've got 2-3 houses sitting there, they've sold or not sold, and yet they're paying all this to have a nice entryway to start selling. And then the other issue I heard was that, you know, a lot of times they'll go in and they'll put in spec or spec houses or model homes. And of course, those are just there to show people what it is that they're constructing, and they have to put in new lawn. And new lawns cost quite a bit to establish, especially in the first few months. And so the way our water works is that, and it's everybody's system is set that way. So the first 5,000 gallons you use, you have a certain fee that you pay, and then from 5 to 10,000 you pay a higher fee, and then from 10 to 15 you pay a higher fee. It's kind of a step system that's there to kind of encourage, you know, water consumption in the amount that you use and things like that. So, so when we assess these entryways and such, then obviously they're going to spend 40,000 gallons maybe in a month on a whole entryway and along the roadway and stuff, where we might spend 20,000 watering our yard or 15,000 watering our yard. So that they have a lot more that they're spending because they're covering a lot more area than a single yard. So actually several years ago when Elk Creek came in, had the same issue. That was the first new subdivision we'd had in quite a while, and that had the same issue come up. So at that point the council and I had worked on a bulk water sales agreement, which is basically where in these situations the developer would sign up, and for a certain amount of time, for a certain period of time, they would get a base rate of so many dollars per thousand, and that would just apply to however many gallons they use. So instead of having that tiered structure, if they use 40,000 gallons, it's based on you know, $4 per thousand, and for that whole 40,000. So basically I pulled that old agreement out because we have, what do we have, 4 or 5 different subdivisions going at the same time now. And I've heard from some of the developers over in LaSalle Heights and Rock Spring, and Jeff heard from the developers over here at Iron Gate. So we know we've got at least 2 that are concerned about this issue. And so we put this, I dusted it out, had Jackie kind of look it over, and basically some of the things in here just to highlight for you is it's only for irrigating of common areas or newly sodded lots, houses. And so for the new lot portion, it's only allowed for 4 months, and typically it takes 3 to 4 months to establish a lawn. So it's not like we're going to allow that until the spec sells, but it's for them to get that lawn established. And then for the entryways and common areas, it would be until the 95% of the lots are sold. So, because again, that's the issue, is they've got 50 lots and 3 people paying HOA dues and the developer's paying the rest. So it's once they get established, then they have the dues coming in that they can cover that. So that's the other key that would end this agreement, is when the yard's established and when 95% of the lots are sold. So that's basically the gist of this. Jeff, did you have anything you want to add from the
Yeah, I mean, the conversation I had with the developer at Iron Gate was, you know, there are several more amenities that they would like to do in that development, but being saddled with the cost of the irrigation is kind of hindering that. I mean, he mentioned, you know, the possibility of a neighborhood pool, and when you're talking Iron Gate, you're talking what, 400 lots when it's done. I mean, so there's a big area, and then a deer run is is that deer run? That's what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
the new
that's
one.
what, 100,
Yeah.
150, something like that. So, you know, when you are starting it out, I mean, it's got to look nice for them to have it sell. But we also, I think we want to encourage quality developers. I think this would help encourage developers to maybe take a little harder look up here as well. I mean, when they know that they can do some extra special things to help sell, which obviously helps us too, because the faster the homes sell, the more, you know, tax revenue the city gets. So, you know, that's just kind of the conversation I had with him, and it's just.
I'd just like to add a couple of things too. You know, we've talked about being pro-business and being more, making ourselves more attractive here to future residents. That's why I like this. But this is not water that we're going to make money really on anyway. A lot of this is the gray water, and with our take or leave pay, so we're just not going to, you know, get as much had we sold it to them at the retail rate.
So I have a few questions.
Yeah.
One, how would we administer some of these contractual terms regarding tracking it for new lots that's only for the 3 to 4 months, and for the common areas it's only until a certain percentage of the lots are sold? What does that look like logistically from a staff perspective?
Sure. So for typically on the common areas, they'll put in a separate meter that handles the common areas so that individual homes aren't being charged for that. So that's simple. All we would do is that we would tell the computer that these meters get this fee. And we've got, 4 or 5 new developments going on, so we just have to track when those are 95% full that we would stop it. So we're going to watch 4 or 5 different developments. As far as the new homes, kind of the similar thing. We average, the last couple of years, we've run about 70, 80 to 100 new homes over the year. So that would be something, so we would have about, out of 3,000 customers, we would have about 100 that we would have to kind of keep a note that, okay, these 4 came in, we need to adjust that in June or whatever. Those 5 or 10 or whatever it may be, that we need to adjust those back. So there is some additional work there, but it's not, 100 houses roughly and 4 subdivisions we have to watch.
So do you have an estimate from a staff hours perspective? What type of impact is that going to have from a management perspective?
No, I did talk to Ted about it because it's his staff, and he said that there would be some additional time. Basically, what they would have to do is someone came when the builder came in, got his building permit, signed up for the utilities, so he's going to start, because that's usually the last thing the water goes in, and then they start watering. So we would just have to keep a spreadsheet or something that as the permits go out, that they were turned on this date, and so on this date we need to make sure that those go off in 4 months.
And so then for the new lots, are they typically installing a separate meter for the lawns versus the houses?
No. So, and again, that's where it goes back to with the, it's going to be a spec home or a model home. And so it's not like there's anybody living there. So it may be a flush the toilet once in a while, washing hands, and that's it.
Okay.
The rest of it's all watering the lawn.
Well, I was wondering because the mayor mentioned the gray water scenario where maybe it's not the water we would typically sell. I wasn't sure how that works in the home scenario if we don't have a separate meter for them or a separate line. How do we manage that?
Yep. So it's just on the water because like
Typical treated water. At
yes.
that point. Okay.
Yep. And we do, like the mayor said, we do get our money back. So we would charge, let's say, we're buying Wichita water for $4 per thousand, and then CCUA costs us, whatever. It's a little bit more because we have the debt service on that. But so let's say it's $4 per gallon is what we're buying it for, and then of course the rates that we set it may be $5 per thousand to cover, administration and stuff. So we're gonna charge $5 per thousand, and if they use 40,000 gallons, we're gonna charge them $5. So we are getting it's not like we're giving the water away.
Right.
Now, as the mayor said, we're gonna lose a little bit of profit because typically it would start increasing the more water they use. So their bill may be, $3,000 for the month instead of $6,000 or $4,000 or something, and that's where they say that it would benefit them to be able to do some more landscaping or something like that.
Well, I understand their concern, and I understand why they're asking for this. Even as a homeowner, I think about putting in a new lawn at my house. That's something that I consider is how much is it going to cost me to water for these 3 or 4 months, and it can be expensive. And I remember going door to door. That was a chief concern of the people that I talked to, was it's just too expensive to water my lawn. And so as I'm thinking about this, and I'm thinking about it from the new developer's perspective, I agree with them that this is a problem. I'm wondering though if we need to be solving this for the whole community and not just for the developers.
And that would be a question, that was a note I had, is, that would be a question if council wanted to, include anybody that's established in a new lot, or a new lawn. Now, of course, man hours, that would be more, because we may end up, instead of 100 new lots in a year, we may have 300 new lots. So there would be some additional time there that we would have to then track, that we had 300 lots instead of 100.
Right.
But again, that would be up to your call on who you'd like to offer that to.
I can imagine that would get a little bit messy.
I think I get some gray area there.
Yeah. But one
like
of the
your
things
idea.
I was wondering about, and probably not appropriate for this type of agreement, I think this is a good idea, and we should pursue this, but I do know that we sell a lot of gray water to the Willow Bend Golf Course, okay? Is there excess of that gray water available for other areas that may be appropriate?
Typically not. Usually, everything that they produce goes to Willow Bend, and there's some other requirements too with gray water. So, because that's been talked about, especially the line runs along 53rd down Rock. So
Right.
over there in Elk Creek, we had originally talked with the developer about that. One of the issues is that with gray water, you have to put up signs that says this is gray water. And you have to stay out of that area when it's being watered and things like that. If you play at the golf course, you'll see those signs around. Of course,
Don't drink out of the sprinkler.
Yeah. Even though,
Don't let your dog drink.
and as gross as it sounds, I mean, when it's treated, it is good water, but still, KDHE has those requirements. And so the developer at that point is saying, well, I don't think that's going to help me sell lots when I have signs around to say,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why I said I didn't think it was necessarily appropriate for this, but I didn't know if maybe there'd be some other areas that could take advantage of that, and if that would reduce some of the demand on the treatment plants, because that water is being used anyway for watering, and if it was switched over to gray water, and I don't know if they'd be interested, but maybe the Catholic Care Center would be interested in doing something like that. But I don't know if there's enough water to even offer such an idea, entertain such an idea.
And the tough part is, and it depends on the year, as to whether we have a lot or not, extra water. Catholic Care, we've actually had conversations with them about, selling them some. The other side we have of that is that Willow Bend, when they signed up to do this, part of their agreement was they pay for the cost of getting that line there. So there's a debt service out there that they have to pay for.
Right.
And so they get first right of refusal, basically.
Okay.
So
Right.
the other issue we ran into, which was a concern with Catholic Care, was, well, they'd have to construct a line, basically from 53rd down to Catholic Care, and then if we had extra water, they would get it. Well, then they were thinking, okay, well, if we're gonna plan on watering our grass with this, but we only get it once in a while,
That's not a
is
good
it
deal.
worth
Right.
paying the money to get it in there? So,
And that's really probably more of a function of how much gray water is produced. But is gray water, and this is just a little bit of education for me, is gray water something that can be produced into drinkable water?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if you continue to process it, you could make it drinkable, but otherwise, you could also use it for gray water?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
That's what I thought the situation was, but, and so if you could sell more gray water for irrigation type purposes, you could reduce the demand of your treatment facility on the water treatment. Is that a correct
Yes,
statement?
you could.
Okay. If you're switching from treated water
Yes.
for irrigation to gray water for irrigation, right? Okay.
Well, just to piggyback on what Ty's telling you is, years ago, before Ty came, we put that line in, this building was built. And at that time, we couldn't afford, or the city couldn't afford, to run a line from 53rd up to city, because they wanted to water all of our park areas and this area up here with the gray water.
Right.
And now, I think that it's way past advancement time for us to go ahead and bring that line in, because like Ty said, you have to put signs up, and then people are gonna come to City Hall. Ugh.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, the other question I have is on page 2, Article 3, 3.1, what is the rate? Because it says that they will be billed at the lowest rate for residential water usage.
And I didn't bring my, my fee schedule up, but it's this fee that the city sets for.
Isn't that 5,000 what was it, 5,000 gallons for $10?
Something like that, yeah, I don't
I can't
remember
remember
exactly
for
the
sure.
name,
It's
but
been
that
too
would
long.
be that would be what would be set.
Yeah.
And then again, that's what it talks about in here, so every year, a lot of times, well, it automatically goes up 3%, but if we would have to do a rate change, then it automatically applies in this situation as well.
And then on page 3, 4.3, under Article 4, would they be interested in lowering the 95% of the lots, say to 75 instead of the 95?
That would be a decision that you guys could make. What they were saying is it'd be nice for them all to be sold, and I thought, well, I don't think we need to do it that
Yeah.
point. But if
Yeah.
There are
95,
issues that have
We're
empty
getting
lots
better
that are
and
empty for a long
Well,
time.
the reason I'm asking
Sure they
is
would like
because years ago, we ran into this problem over here. The guy filed bankruptcy, and that's where we're sitting with the 9 lots now.
Yeah.
And they were, we put water meters in over there for him to water the entrances and stuff. Well,
Yeah.
he didn't pay him.
Right. Yep.
Yeah, I think that's a good point on the 95%. I think maybe lower that to 90, 85%, 90. something.
Well, 85
Sure.
or something,
Yeah,
but I think 95,
I think
gosh,
95 is
they
pretty high.
got them
Yeah.
all sold.
I'd be okay with 75.
75.
I think
I'd be okay with
75.
75 even.
But-
I think 80 would be a good number.
Yeah.
That way they know they're not going to be burdened, but they know they should be able to take care of everything with that. So
What is the approximate percent savings that they'd be getting? Is it like a 50% savings?
No, it wouldn't be that much, because, like Betty said, the first 5,000 is maybe 10, and then the next 5,000 is maybe 12, and, but I bet you it'd be 30, 40%.
and it depends on the size as well. I mean, if you're looking at a small development like Out Creek, they don't have that much common space, but when you're looking at 400 lots at Iron Gate, that's a lot of common area. So
Do we have an estimate as to how this would impact our water revenues from those developments today?
It would, so if we're looking at 2019, it's going to decrease some of our revenue. But we also, if we continue our trend of 100 new houses, we may actually come out
Making up
flat
the difference.
by making up the difference of new users.
I think.
I guess I'm just interested in what the difference would be, if we had those 100 users and the fees stayed the same versus the new 100 users with the fees changing here. Kind of what is the value of the agreement? today.
Well, it also depends on if they put in sod or just buffalo grass or, what's the other one, fescue.
Yeah, but
It's
we
always-
know their water usage current, right? And so
Yeah.
if we were to
I can get you
project
that
I'm
info.
just curious what type of money we're really talking about here.
Yeah, I can get you that, because like you said, there's like 5 developments we could look at pretty easily.
But I still think 75% would be a good number.
So we've had 3 of us say 75%, 80%.
I'm okay with any of them.
The first thing I noticed at 95, my initial reaction was, whoa, that's pretty high. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a high standard. That's, okay, so 75 seems more reasonable, just spitball. I mean, that's the first number that came to my head after seeing 95. It's like, well, I don't know about that, but
And again, keep in mind, originally when this was built, that was pretty much the first new development.
Sure.
Aside from Center Park, so we're really trying.
I understand
And
that.
I think, just keep in mind, I want to go back to what Councilmember Smith kind of was asking about too with the questions. Yeah, this isn't, reiterating, we're not giving anything away. We're not, and looking at different ways that we can be more, business friendly and show the developers that we're serious about helping them come build our city.
So I do have a question. The way it's currently worded is it's 95% that has houses constructed on the lot. So it's not merely just selling the lot. A house has to be constructed. Does that, okay, so say a house gets constructed, they put in a lawn, what, 3 or 4 months, then that switches over, that individual homeowner switches over to the normal rate. This exists only for the developer
Right.
and the common areas.
Right. And that was a question that Justin was asking is, so this is set up just for the developer, so it would only be in a spec home or a model home. Now, it does happen where the builder builds a lot and the homeowner says, okay, well, it's closed, the lawn's yours. Now, that would be the question is, do you want to allow that homeowner this same type of, or is it just for the spec and model homes? Which again, the idea for those is so to get people in to look at the subdivision.
And
I would be willing to go 3 months, I'm sorry.
no, it's okay.
Go 3 months on the new homeowner. But if the house changes hands, say the first loan doesn't go through and then somebody else comes, it's dropped off with the developer.
We could just make it available one time for a lot. Doesn't matter who the owner is.
Yeah.
One time per lot.
Yeah.
Do we want to consider changing the language from house constructed to lot sold? I mean, because, you could get a situation where you sell a bunch of lots, but there's no houses on them, and,
Yeah, that's a good point.
Well, they're not using water
They're
then.
not using water, yeah. There's probably
Yeah,
no
but
water
it would be
either.
for the common areas.
It's more about your metric for when do you stop providing the discount on the common areas.
Yeah.
I think we keep it at the 75% per lot sold, would be my recommendation, thinking out loud on that. And again, that's another kind of a,
See, this says.
you don't want to buy the lot and
houses-
just sit on it forever. We want to see something.
Yeah,
built
because
on
he
it.
could hold it for 3 years and never get a buyer.
4.3 says it's houses constructed. So if you want to change that, like, it's fine, but that's what it says right now.
And that would be fine, because typically the way developers put together their HOAs is they don't pay HOAs dues because they're paying for the water and all the other stuff that's going in. And then when a lot sells, then that lot owner has to start paying HOA dues, whether there's a house on it or not. So either way you would want to go would be fine. If it's lot sold or a house constructed, either way.
I don't know, just thinking out loud here, thought that I'm having is, I'm wondering if it would make sense to consider offering anyone in the city of Bel Aire the opportunity to put in a second meter for irrigation, and then just designing our water fee schedule to be different for anyone doing irrigation to try and make it more affordable for everyone doing irrigation. If we have a surplus of water.
Well,
So I agree that this is a problem, and it's something that I hear a lot about, and I've complained about myself, is it's too expensive to water our lawns.
So you got two issues with that proposal. I'm not putting it down, I'm just
Sure.
trying to think through it, okay?
Yeah.
What's the cost of putting another meter in, and the cost of segregating your watering system from that? I mean, it's kind of already
You
segregated.
get one payment but
Yeah.
two bills, yeah.
Right.
You know, that's gonna be a problem for the homeowner, because I don't think the city should be paying for that extra meter. And I don't know that you would get a benefit out of it, you know, simply because the cost of that meter might outweigh any savings you get.
In mine, I'm not sure what the meter costs. I know, just talking
Well-
with some citizens here in Bel Aire, there are people that have put in secondary meters just for the purpose of irrigation, and I don't know exactly how they receive a benefit from that today, or if there was some benefit at some time, but there are people that have done that specifically for rate purposes.
What they've done, Justin, is the meter at a couple of years or 3 years ago, maybe 6, was $1,500 to $2,000 for a sprinkler system. But when the guy comes out and whatever you call it, services it to turn it off for the winter, then they contact the city, and then when they go back to re-hook that up or turn it back on, they don't get a bill through the winter time. But when they turn it back on, then they have to pay a connect fee. So in the long run, by the time that you put in another meter and pay, say, up to $2,000, and you're running it for 3 months, it can get pretty expensive,
Yeah.
especially if you've got sod or zoysia or something of that sort that has to be watered quite a bit.
And I think another issue with that is, when I first got here, the sewer rate was tied to the water rate. So, and then we switched over to the winter average, because, you know, people that were sprinkling had 20,000 gallons in water, then they paid 20,000 gallons in sewer too. And so that's why they had a different meter.
Yep.
It was bad,
Yeah.
especially if they had a $500 water bill sometime.
Well, I think this is a good idea. I think we should pursue this, and I assume that we would only be bringing this before council when there's an active contract to be signed.
Well, actually, I put it in here where I could sign it.
Oh, okay.
That way it doesn't have all, you know.
So
doesn't have
we
to
would
come.
give you a blanket authority to
Yeah.
sign such agreement under these conditions.
As long as they met these conditions, then I could sign it, and then we would just monitor to make sure that it went off when it was supposed to.
Now, do they pay for the meter to monitor? Okay.
Well, I mean, they pay to install the meter, which is a
Yeah,
couple thousand.
that's what I meant.
Yeah.
Hopefully this will spur some more growth and show the.
and just to clarify, so this can be created using gray water or just the lower rate of the regular water, is that right?
It wouldn't be gray water
They
because
were-
we can't hook into it. It's
Right,
lower
right.
than lead such.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're not offering gray water at all in this deal.
Right,
I didn't think so.
right.
I just brought that up as whether there's.
No, yeah,
any
I was just
options to
making
talk
sure
about.
that was clear, yeah, okay.
All right, so we'll move forward with that. Do you think that'll be ready for our next meeting, or do you want to hold off to it?
Yep.
Well, he
Okay.
doesn't have to bring it back, does he, if he can sign it?
No, I mean.
No, we have to approve the,
Oh,
yeah, at the meeting, is what I'm saying.
right, sorry.
Okay. Good questions, good discussions, and appreciate all of that, and appreciate all the forward, outside the box thinking here.
On that, are you gonna reach out to the developers that are currently developing?
Yes, so once, if you approve it, then I'll contact all the developers, let them know. Yep.
And you'll have that information on kind of an estimate of how it could impact our water revenues. Okay.
Yep.
All right, want to move us on to item number 3. This is something brought up a couple months ago, and appreciate the conversation we had on this as well. I think I mentioned I brought this up at the previous council, and they decided to leave it as is. You know, the way we do it right now, you guys are all aware, we gavel in the meeting, open it, and ask people to join us in a moment of silent prayer. And, just looking around nearby here, we see, Sedgwick County opens their meetings with the prayer. Kansas House of Representatives opens up with the prayer. Kansas Senate opens up with a prayer. City of Wichita opens up. And I just, looking around Bel Aire, and I see all the diversity and even the diversity among Christians in Bel Aire, and like the idea of obviously we want to be not a fire and brimstone prayer, not a for a specific item, if you will, but just something that there's a whole list here of what other cities were doing that I saw here that aren't
You
here.
had it up there.
Yeah, what did I do with it?
I don't know.
It went away. Come on, you. Let's see if I can find this again.
It's on the back of the manager's.
Is that okay?
That's not on
what-
the, it's not on the prayer draft.
That's okay. That's fun, Martin. Like I knew I'd seen it going through all this stuff, and appreciate the information on that. When Stacy called around researching what some other cities do, I know Jackie's been working on this policy. Just real quick, you can see Andover has a chaplain from the police department lead the prayer. If the chaplain's not available, a council member leads a prayer. Baxter Springs invites in clergy to lead before the meeting. Greensburg also invites in. If no one is able to attend, the mayor leads. Liberal invites in. Ottawa does the same thing. Paola. Paola, what was interesting there was the prayer and Pledge of Allegiance occurs before the meeting is called to order. So the minutes don't even reflect. Which,
I don't like
I
that.
think it's all or nothing. I don't my thought was originally that we would open it up to, and I appreciate the policy how it breaks down whether it's a Catholic priest, rabbi, imam, Christian preacher. We want to ask them to set to a time limit, and then the question is what happens if we send out the invitation and we meet twice a month, and if we don't have someone signed up for that month, is it one of us that leads the prayer, or do we go back to silent prayer?
Go back to silent prayer.
That's how we have it written for now.
That's what it's drafted,
Yep,
yeah.
that's kind of what I was hoping to say. So otherwise, I would nominate Jim Benage every time.
I know Jeff asked the last time we discussed this about boundaries, and is it going to be Bel Aire ministers, priests, rabbis, that type of thing only?
This doesn't, as I remember reading through this has nothing about geographic
It doesn't have
boundaries.
any boundary on it, or
And-
any Bel Aire, just,
In a way, I'm kind of okay with that. I guess my only thought.
well, I don't want
along-
somebody coming from Wichita.
My only thought on it is that if you set the boundaries as Bel Aire, you do exclude, you may exclude congregation from people here. I don't know, because I don't know where everybody goes to church. But, so I wouldn't want to exclude people in close proximity simply
It certainly
because of the
excludes two
boundary.
religions too.
Yeah, you would exclude the Muslims because their mosque is
Yeah, but we
is
have
outside of
one
Bel
that
Aire.
lives in Bel Aire.
Do we have any imam that lives in Bel Aire?
Yes.
Okay. And
And we have.
And synagogue on Woodlawn.
so,
But there's also a minister that, or I'm not sure what they call them, from Muslims that live out here that are, do they call them priests or ministers?
There's different levels
imams
of
used
them, yeah.
typically, but
Imams?
not always.
I don't know,
Yeah.
but I know that there's several different denominations out here.
But I want to go back to, I think Councilmember Benage brings up a good point with boundaries. I think it needs to, my thought is there needs to be at least some connection to Bel Aire. I mean, you just go down 37th, there's two churches right across the street from Treetop. I think, one's a Disciples of Christ and one's a
Christian
Church of
Church.
Christ, or is it a?
I think it's Cornerstone Christian Church.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that, I know a number of Bel Aire residents attend, but that's not considered a
Yeah,
Bel
but
Aire.
their ministers live in Bel Aire.
I think the safest default position is just keep it the borders of Bel Aire. Reason being, if we start exploring beyond the borders of Bel Aire, then we enter into, the discussion of, well, how far beyond? Just a block or a distance, 100 feet, well, why not 200? I think forming this policy, I think to start off with, the default position should just be the borders of Bel Aire. I think that makes the most sense, and it's the simplest guideline to follow.
So as long as they touch the border,
Well,
I'm thinking of the two churches on 37th like we just talked about.
that's a good question. So the border, as I understand it, is right down the middle of the street. Is that right?
Right.
So,
Treetop is Bel Aire, those two churches are not.
right. So I would say if we define strictly the border, then those churches would be excluded because that's the border. They're on the other side of the border, and that's the way the line cuts, right? So I guess that's what my thought is especially since we're forming, and forging a new policy here. I think that's a reasonable position to defend, and it's somewhat neutral because the boundaries of Bel Aire are the boundaries, and I understand there's the discussion of going beyond that, but my opinion is I think we should just start off with sticking to the borders as they are and a strict adherence to them. So if it's within the borders of Bel Aire,
The church building or a clergy member?
well,
Clergy member.
That-
Because there's a lot of clergy members, like
so
those two pastors or priests, whatever they are, across on 37th, they both live in Bel Aire.
So you couldn't exclude anyone who lived in Bel Aire?
Right.
Even with them being a
But
clergy
even
member
though
of
they're
the-
if you say Bel Aire boundaries, then those two people could still come and say the prayer before, at the council meeting, and then, I can't
Well, let me give you a good
remember.
example of that. A former council member, Peggy O'Donnell, her husband, Dr. O'Donnell, is a pastor, but his church is way south on 47th and 35. Actually, 35, isn't it down way south?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
But at that time, he lived in Bel Aire, so he
Right.
would have.
right.
So
I
there's
just-
two
So
entry
could you,
points.
how about we say that the church or the pastor, well, don't
Within
want to
Bel
limit
Aire.
to pastors, the church or the chaplain be within Bel Aire, because I do
Church or
know,
clergy member.
I do know, like, for instance, the other Church of the Resurrection on 37th Street, the pastor does not live in Bel Aire. But
Well, let's
churches,
change that.
just tell them to get over it.
The whole point is to serve the residents of Bel Aire, right?
Yeah.
So
So either the
whatever
church-
language that covers either the church or
Clergy member.
Or
clergy member,
From within Bel Aire.
Within the boundaries
borders.
of Bel Aire.
right.
Are you happy with that, Mayor?
I like it. I like it. I appreciate you guys letting us do this, and
Are we signing up to this document here is a guideline, right? This isn't the actual policy, or
It would be
We
your
pass it,
policy.
it's policy.
this is the policy?
Yeah, if we pass it.
And if it doesn't work in a year, you can always change it.
right.
I did want to ask you specifically about, kind of picked arbitrarily, that no in the frequency section, just making sure that no one, I think I heard some good discussion about not wanting the same person every
More than
week.
4 per year, yeah.
Is 4 per year a good number,
I
or
like
is there
that
something?
number.
I think
I
That's
think
good.
it's fine. I was talking with our new pastor about this. He was doing this in Augusta. He said he did it once a year. That's all the time they needed it, apparently, because they had enough others. But Augusta's a little bigger town.
Does this have like a first come, first serve, like in terms of the clerk maintaining the list?
We decided, we didn't specify exactly, just to kind of keep everything so that way it can work. We didn't specify exactly the procedure that the clerk shall use to pick, but traditionally, it'll probably be first come, first serve, unless there's some
I
other
like that
reason that
better,
becomes
'cause-
more important. If we specify, then we're kind of cornering ourselves.
I mean, I would imagine if a member of the clergy calls and they want to do it on August 14th, but August 14th is already taken, well, how about if I'll do August 21?
Right, I think that's sensible.
Well, should they do both council meetings in 1 month, the same person, or separate them?
I think the meetings individually should be just treated as
You can sign.
individual events, right?
Individual.
If they want to do all 4 back to back to back,
So,
be like a mini-series.
so we basically, so the clerk would just have a blank list for the year of every council meeting date, and
Fill in the blank.
the religious leader person can call up and say, hey, I want to give the prayer at this date, and if it's open, they first come, first serve basis. I mean, that
Yeah,
that
but you're gonna
seems-
have to get the word out to them.
Well, do we-
She'll send an invitation to
Well, that-
invite everybody to do this, or?
You know, that's another thing.
I
So
didn't see
once this
that.
if this just becomes our policy, I mean, we don't have a legal obligation to send out invitations, right?
No.
I think it'd be the right thing for us to maybe send at the very least an email to each church.
Yeah.
Each known
And
church.
school.
And we
that-
could put I don't know if we'd want to go so far as putting an ad, or, I mean, we can, obviously, since this is a new policy, it's,
Right.
what would we typically,
I think we just, to get the ball rolling, get the word out there, we would, obviously ask, Tristan does a really good job of spreading things far and wide with Twitter and Facebook and Nextdoor.
yeah, I think a
Have some in the
minimum,
newspaper, yeah.
invite all the churches and synagogues and whatever
Mhm.
is
And that's,
listed in Bel Air.
That we know of.
That we
always have to
that we
say
know
we
of, right?
Mhm.
Right.
and, piggyback.
I think they should have a written invitation to get it started.
I think.
And it doesn't take
Just
that much to make
simple
up
letter.
a invitation on the computer.
And I would also suggest that those of us sitting here at the table right now, and including our staff members, if they know of a member of clergy or happen to worship inside the boundaries of Bel Aire, that, they can reach out and ask. That's how they do it at the state legislature. Sure. Yeah, they, the state rep, when it's his or her turn, they find a pastor from their district, and same thing, so get the word out.
So then if we don't have a person to fill in for the certain date, we'll just go back to the
Correct.
silent prayer.
Yep.
Does that need to be added in here?
I think
think
it
it
is.
is. Isn't it?
Yeah, it was in.
Pardon?
That's the way we have it.
Okay.
Jackie, do you have a legal or procedural opinion on the topic of whether the prayer should be before the gavel swing or after the gavel swing?
Absolutely, definitely. Well, let me just think
Or
about
the
what
official
point.
opening of meeting?
It's absolutely fine, I think, to do it once the meeting is open, so within the meeting, but definitely before we get into official business. That's a
Right.
real touchy spot.
Like we're doing it now.
Right, because if it ever gets into, like, there's some really interesting cases about, oh, we don't like him, let's pray about this decision,
Oh, boy.
and then you have a person, and then it becomes coercive, and then it becomes problematic, and, it's a very positive thing you're doing, but it can elicit some negative feelings, so keeping it before and in honor of tradition and, longstanding practice would be the only thing that the city council as a group is advocating. Anything else is just, you don't want to mix it with the business you do. So definitely answer your question. It's okay after the gavel swings, but definitely before you get into the business of it.
And I would want to have a conversation with you before our first member of the clergy were to come do that, because I want to have worst case, what do we do if 15 minutes they're still,
And we have
they're giving altar calls and they're giving, what point do I become the disrespectful or bring it in? So I would like to ask, and I'm asking in front of the council just so they know that we kind of.
And I think it specifically says they shall not exceed 5 minutes.
I thought
And that was
we
a
should
number
keep
that
that.
seemed to make sense.
Which I think is great.
I think you need to keep it to that, because beyond that, it becomes a sermon,
That's right.
and that's not its purpose.
Especially, I like that, so if it's someone who's appropriate and within the time, shortly after, someone who's respectful and shortly after 5 minutes they start to run over, you want to tell them too, because you don't want to get in a situation where, well, you've never stopped anyone in my religion, you don't like it. So it's just about just being really consistent in how you treat the people that come up. And we can always work on the spot to, anytime you're seeing someone being disparaging or being
I can
offensive.
give Ty the look and he can have a prod.
We
that he
can reel them back in.
Cattle prod.
Because you have to, order becomes the most important thing to
Yeah.
everybody.
I think, I don't know, to me, 5 minutes seems long.
I was just
It
going
does
there.
to me too.
Why don't we just,
I think
I was
3
thinking-
minutes.
for consistency, I was thinking 3, since that's our citizens' concerns.
Here we go.
Time.
There we go.
There
you go.
3 minutes.
Just keep it the same.
Yeah.
Good.
I think anytime we deviate, there's,
Then you get the mayor all confused. So do I give this guy 5? And
Yeah.
3? What's the rule today?
Use the same sign.
I like keeping it simple.
Yeah, I'll hold up side.
I figured
I used to do
at-
that during my dad's sermons. I was a bad boy.
I figured at the end of 3 minutes, you would just say, amen. That was the time to stop. The mayor said amen.
I think this is a really good change and a good policy, and I think this is great.
I just wanted to share something too, just in case citizens that might be listening or watching this later and wondering about, how this might tie in with the First Amendment and whatnot. I did a little bit of research, and in 2014 there was a U.S. Supreme Court ruling regarding the town of Greece, New York, which had an issue with, there was a court case brought because the town was majority Christian, and the prayers they were having at their city meetings were, someone did not like that they were overtly Christian. And so a lawsuit was filed, and it made it all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. And the ruling was 5-4 in favor of allowing prayer at government meetings, because that's ultimately what the court case revolved around. And I didn't want to spend too much time talking about it, but I just thought that it was interesting. Justice Kennedy wrote the majority opinion on that, and he had a real brief statement that I thought kind of summarized kind of the reason, we state a historical kind of precedent in our policy here. But I just thought this brief statement he made towards the conclusion of his remarks kind of sums up answering that question of, well, what are we doing? Oh my goodness, are we opening this up for, lots of controversy and whatever? And I just thought this quote was a good guidance to the city. And Justice Kennedy said, the inclusion of a brief ceremonial prayer as part of a larger exercise in civic recognition suggests that its purpose and effect are to acknowledge religious leaders and the institutions they represent, rather than to exclude or coerce non-believers. And I just thought that kind of offers a little bit of perspective and a little bit of insight as to someone that might be wondering or concerned about this new policy. So I just wanted to share that.
I appreciate that too. Along with that, I think it's a great thing that we're looking at this for any religious group that wants to participate. We're not limiting it to Christians or Jews or Muslims. It's any religious group that wants to participate. Of course, you have the 3-minute limit, and we're not asking them to. We're actually asking them to not preach, but only limit it to prayer. So I think that's the right thing to do, and I really applaud it, so. We're not establishing religion with this, and that's the prohibition. We cannot establish the religion, but.
We'll certainly
Certainly
have all
can't
that,
have it
that
in
conversation
public
with the member of clergy before he or she would offer the
Yes.
blessing that gentleman.
Send them probably a generic kind of email or notice or leave them a voicemail.
Alrighty, we'll put that on there.
Very good.
Next is something we're talking about getting with the times, I guess you can, but it's something that Councilmember Hawes brought up, common consumption areas. We want to talk about that.
Well, and to clarify, this is more not so much common consumption area. Common consumption area, Jackie and I, when we talked about it, it's more of a designated area that's kind of all the time allowed. Take KC Live up in Kansas City. They have an area between a lot of restaurants that you can always just go out. It's allowed. This is from talking to Jackie, is more going to be about special permitting, allowing alcohol. Say beer garden, if the city wanted to go forward with that, with like the Fall Fest. This could be for Oktoberfest. This could be. There's a lot of options with this. Now, Jackie, I guess, found out some interesting information, because I think most people are under the impression that Bel Aire is still dry and has never opted into the alcohol, but apparently somewhere between 2012, somewhere in there, the state of Kansas changed their rules. So at that time, the city took action and kind of spoke upon a couple of different beverages. One was the cereal malt beverage, limiting the alcohol content of that. But basically, with them going to that, it opted in completely. So the city right now, pretty much anything's allowed.
Yep.
There's certain things on the books that I think need cleaned up, because with the cereal malt beverage being on there, it is limited at the 3.2% alcohol, which is what grocery stores and convenience stores have. But especially considering the state of Kansas has changed that law as next July, there will be no 3.2 alcohol in Kansas. It'll all be the same. Beer will be the same. Cereal malt beverage will 6 point, which is percentage. 6 point percentage of the beer is going to be at. Well, unless you get that Canadian
Well, who's
beer.
the expert here?
That'll be allowed at liquor stores and convenience stores. So I think there's some cleanup that's needed. I think there's also possibly some discussion on what would be allowed, how it would be allowed. I know the state laws vary a little bit on what's required as far as security, as far as boundaries. I think the city's allowed to limit some of the stuff and to say, are we going to do a special permit for the entire park? Are we going to have it roped off? If we're going to have one entry point, how we need to do that? I think there's some clarification, but I think this is important. Moving on to the future, there's a huge movement, especially with craft breweries. You're getting a lot of just really small breweries popping up around Wichita. I don't know, there's probably 10 or 12 of them. And people making craft beer at home. Wine is the same thing. I actually enjoy making wine at home. It's quite fun. It's delicious. So, but moving along with the times, and I think some of these. I think we have some great activities and special events. A lot of them are geared toward kids and family, but I think there's a lot of single people that live in Bel Aire that would love to have something to do as well. And I think if somebody came up with a plan to have like an Oktoberfest, even chili cook-offs and beer goes great with chili. There's certain things that I think that this would be important to move forward on and kind of set limits, and then possibly even next year Fall Fest we could talk about expanding Fall Fest from 10 to 2 to kind of an all-day deal. If we can get more things to do, we have a beer garden, just people out there all day. I mean, I'd love to see Justin's car sitting out there all day. You know?
So, just kind of baseline, do we currently have any businesses in Bel Aire that sell alcohol?
No.
I didn't think there was a single one, but I didn't know. Just wanted to make sure. So, what you're really asking here is, could we have a special use type of permit for like events like at the rec center?
Well,
Is that kind of thing for public?
The conversation is more of
property?
what the special events permit would look like. Kind of what regulations, because as far as right now, if a business, let's say Bob and Luigi's, if they wanted to sell alcohol, all they have to do is go to the state and get their alcohol license, their liquor license, and according to the city laws, they can sell alcohol because we are opted in.
So we don't have
Is it
the
still on
ability to
that
issue
they have
a liquor
to-
license under current ordinance?
They would have to notify the city, and I think that there's some sort of process.
They
but there's
have
no,
to
like-
register the liquor
Right,
license. I mean, there's
Right.
yeah,
But there's
they just
no-
can't start selling it, right? But
But it's
Wouldn't
not
be required.
it's not a cash and carry. They've got to drink it on the property.
There are different forms. I mean, you could
Because
do-
we had an ice cream shop down there where Family Video is, and he had a hamburger shop in the back, and he could sell beer 3.2, but they couldn't take it off the premises.
well,
had
I
to
think
drink
that
it
could be.
there.
Yeah, you
down
see
the-
that a lot of places, no alcohol beyond this point.
Right.
Yeah.
well, and that's the way because
Casinos are getting like
the thing
that
is
too.
the
You can't
licensing,
walk out
the
with
state
it.
licensing is
Right.
different.
Yeah,
for
but
selling
he had to
alcohol.
get a state license.
Yeah,
also.
yeah, but it's different. You can either have package license or you can have service
Yeah.
license. So that's where the breweries kind of differ a little bit too, because some of these restaurants that when they make their own brew, they can also sell it and you can take it home. So there's some differences in there, but that has to do more with their licensing than what we do. Like I said, my thoughts are, first of all, I think some of the language about the 3.2 needs to be just cleaned up and got rid of. Here's kind of my thoughts. Thinking about families and stuff, I think that if there were a beer garden at an event, Fall Fest, for example, my opinions is it would have to be fenced off as a separate area with limited access, one entry point, where then whoever's in charge, there's several places that you can contract with like mobile, and they bring a trailer in and they've got beer and wine and alcohol, whatever. They'll tailor it to what you want for the event. They make some money off of it. You make people happy, but they would be required to, or maybe we'd be in an agreement where we can put some of the orange fencing up, the snow fencing to separate, and maybe they'd have their security there at the entry, because ultimately it's their liquor license.
Right.
They're the ones that would be responsible for carting, and I think you can't even be in that area if you're not 21 type. I mean, I think keep it safe, keep it separate, but my kids are older.
I think if it's fenced off, it's your choice to go in there or not. And
Well, you still have
there's
to be 21 though, is what I'm
Yeah.
saying. They'll have security at the one entry
But
point.
still, a lot of people are gonna gripe and complain, oh, you're serving alcohol. Well, you don't have to go in there.
Yeah, a good example, recently in March when the NCAA tournament came to Wichita, they relaxed those laws because they had different event, things all over. Whereas before, you could not walk, but if you wanted to buy a beer at one, and there were a couple of
Stay
them
within.
that were contained, you walked in, you got a wristband, but you had to finish it before you could leave, and there's another part where you could, walk out between this area. So,
Right.
Well, then
And that's where we are, like, we're looking at common consumption area is where several businesses agree to have this common space where everybody can move around with their drinks. We're not quite there yet. Maybe, the park comes along and you have several establishments, that's what we'll go after. But for now, Jeff's exactly right. We need just some sort of bound area that whoever has that alcohol license can create that fits what you would expect at a Bel Aire event.
And it's a permit that you come and get with the city and have it hung up in Plainview, just like somebody's having a garage sale. But then there's certain stipulations they have to have. I think that's where I think having the language on that permit is beneficial. I mean, definitely, no glass bottles, no glass cups, no, none of that. I mean, I think that just having that stated is a good thing, especially like I said with the current way things are written for the liquor. I think it needs to be cleaned up because I'm not sure that they knew when they did that it opted everything in. So
I still think that it should be added in there that it's confined in that roped off or fenced
absolutely.
area. I don't
Absolutely.
think they should be walking around
no.
in a phone
No, you
booth
cannot, yeah.
carrying a
Yep.
cup of beer or
Nope.
wine or whatever they're doing.
Just curious, have we had any requests for these types of permits recently? I mean, I fully support reviewing this policy. I think we need to modernize it and set it up so that when we do get those types of requests, we have a policy in place. We can accommodate that growth. I'm just curious, have we had any recent requests for this type?
I think
of
a
permit?
year or two ago, we had one, the Catholic Church has some type of event where
They have an Oktoberfest.
give out a
Huh?
fundraiser type thing, I think, I'm not sure, but anyway.
Well, we have,
Party for Parkinson's.
oh, that
Okay.
was, okay, so that
Yeah.
was done at at this Catholic Care Center, the Party for Parkinson's.
now, were they selling?
I don't know
Or
if
was
they
it
were.
because
I've
there's a
never-
difference in the laws if
I've
you're
never been
if it's
there.
not for sale and if it's on private property.
They weren't selling.
Yeah.
No, I don't know what they were, they probably were wanting to serve, I think they were having a hamburger cookout and they
Yeah.
wanted to serve beer at the
Yeah.
hamburger cookout.
Something like that.
But that was probably something they
Yeah.
did.
Yeah, and I think it was.
And they're, while they're all part of the Catholic Church, Church of the Resurrection actually operates completely separate from them. I mean, the campus looks similar, but it is not.
And so in that scenario, it wasn't allowed because we didn't have a process for this?
No, we put together a permit that allowed
Okay.
that, but we've
So
not
we-
had anybody for like a beer garden or something where they were actually selling it.
So on a one-off basis, we've kind of
Yeah.
cobbled together some
Yeah.
permits in the past.
And the reason this has come up is conversations with the CDC and of course when we were when Jeff and I were members of the CDC is we had conversations of big dreams of expanding things. I mean back 15, 20 years ago when they had Bel Aire days and it was a full blown deal. Now we've got our little fall fest, which is 3 or 4 hours, and it's a lot of fun. I've enjoyed going every year, and I'll enjoy this year. But big picture is the more things we can have for the citizens, the better the experience is for them. And so talking with the CDC and having those conversations, and like I said, I think I was under the impression that Bel Aire had never opted in at all, and it was still dry, and nobody. You couldn't serve, you couldn't sell, but after conversations, and thank you for the research that you did. It is a little different, but I think talking to her, I think there's some language that just needs to be added to what the permit would be.
I think this is right on point with other things that we're looking at that are pro-business and pro-growth, pro-trying to draw other businesses into our community. I think we definitely need to take a look at this.
Yeah, I just had a few thoughts. So, first of all, I appreciate you, Jeff, bringing this up as an issue. I don't think it's one I would have thought of and really to bring up. So I really do appreciate that. And I just want to say, just like on a personal note, as an individual, I choose to not consume any alcohol. But I think that updating our policy to allow for the visions that you're talking about is something that I would definitely support. This is about building our community, and one perspective I have on this is just this past 4th of July, I visited family back east, and we went to a very small farm community, a community that's smaller than Bel Aire in rural Illinois, and they had a big 4th of July festival. They have a kind of a common area there, and they had exactly what you described. They had first of all, they got a playground where the kids are playing, and like food trucks and vendors and snow cones, the whole bit, all summer fun food stuff. And then right in the middle, they have their beer garden, their adult beverage area that's fenced off with snow fence. I mean, it's right out of what I know exactly what you're picturing, because I've been there and I've seen it, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, it works. It's very sensible. The adults that want to go consume alcoholic beverages can do that, and it's isolated, even though it's in close proximity to where kids in the whole community are. It's not a problem. I mean, it's just a part of the culture and the community, and some people want to drink adult beverages, and I have no problem with that at all. I think promoting that in our community is a good thing, and I think it can work. I've seen it work.
Well, they have it at the
it's-
state fair.
Well,
They have a
yeah.
beer
I
garden
mean,
at the state
I
fair.
think it's sensible, and I think us, taking the steps to have a clear policy that guides that in the sense of building our community and increasing options for business. I support that completely. I think that's a great idea.
Any other thoughts on this?
So we'll just make sure that the documents we have, because we can kind of achieve all of this right now, just putting together different things, but we'll make sure the documents we have clarify that with the code language, and then any specific language on a special events permit, and maybe even update a special events permit for alcohol-related activities.
And I think, just for my knowledge, I'd like to, as a group, just talk through what exactly that process is, and as we start to look at our processes and making sure our processes aren't too burdensome and cumbersome, let's review what that looks like and make sure it's not a lengthy and involved process to go through that process.
Before I move on, my public service announcement, Governor Collier just conceded.
Really?
So Chris Kobach is the Republican nominee as of 7:36. Okay. Yeah, my Twitter was going off there, so. That was going on, so. All right, I want to move us on to marketing, and it's kind of a all-encompassing topic here. Just heard Councilmember Smith talk about, we want to be pro-growth, pro-business, and we're hearing a lot of that. Some of our recent changes, things we talked about even tonight, but how do we tell the masses that we're pro-growth and pro-business? How do we enhance our image? Those are two of the topics I want to introduce tonight, not asking for specific solutions, but some conversation that we could have in the future here. The couple just things I want to bring up here is, in just about 2 years from now is the year 2020 when Bel Aire will turn 40. So looking at the future, we're still a pretty young city when you look around, but these next 2 years, if we gear up for our 40th anniversary, I really think we can celebrate with a common consumption area. And
Special use permit.
yes. So,
Not common consumption.
but just some things to bring up, and as I talk about these things, because I know questions are, how do we pay for it? And we will, with our closing is it the end of this week? Or is it going to be next week?
It's scheduled for next Wednesday.
Okay, that's going to free up $100,000 in specials. This is outside of the budget. This is, so we're still doing the $500,000 towards streets. We're still doing all of that. So I'm not talking about any of those line items there. But I want us to kind of think about how is it that we want to present ourselves. We've done a really, really good job of managing the debt. We've done a really good job of managing the debt. And we're starting to get more and more interest on a more regular basis. And some of the interest we're getting, I think, is a lot more closer to reality than they were a few years ago. Ty and I sat through some presentations, and we kind of, we now have some real interest coming. So the 4 items, looking at, because I want to look at how we can get the ball rolling, how we can get this ball rolling to really attract retail that's going to buy land, retail that's going to pay taxes, all of which helps us manage this land debt and get out of land debt quicker. The first thing I'd like to do is to ask Ty to send out an RFP for design on the city park. Again, this is no cost, but just to send out RFPs so that we can know the real cost and the timeline. Of course, the timeline, I think we've all made it very clear, wants to have citizen input, with the natural gathering spots that I think are needed to kind of go along with that. So I think it's time that we can get moving in the right direction on that, so that we can get that information to bring back to you guys. So I would ask for your blessing on that. The second thing is, and I wish I would have sent it emailed out here, but well, you've all seen downstairs. You've all seen our city hall here. We have not updated a doggone thing in this building since it was built. And when it was built, at that time, it was, we didn't have an extra penny anywhere. And it's starting to show its age down there. We have, looking around when you first walk in, I'm talking, pictures that we have, and we have that oak billboard that I was telling Jackie, it reminds me of the banner or the sign that hung up in the sanctuary growing up in church. Hymn 304 is going to be sung, and last week's attendance, blah blah blah. And we have a bulletin board with just
Crap.
Yes. Say it loud, say it proud with crap on it. When you walk in, it's this yellow beigeish paint. It's 2-3 tables just sitting out there. This is, where people are coming in, and we're doing our dog and pony show, and we're trying to show off our city and tell these businesses to come in and that they want to invest in Bel Aire. And I hope I'm not insulting anybody here, but I don't want us to look like a little podunk town, because we're not. But yet, what image are we portraying? And other things, downstairs where we've got, a 4-H banner from a club that I don't even know exists anymore. And we've got a trophy case in there that has certificates, as recently as 2011 that no one's looking at. Just if we, some of the thoughts that I had were, and I don't know what color it should be. I would certainly want someone with a much better opinion that knows these things, but just, and who knows, maybe that is the right color for our community room. Maybe that is the right color for our entranceway. But to me, I think it should be brighter. I think maybe if we had again, getting with the times, LED TVs hardly cost anything now. Could we get rid of those bulletin boards and little, we got to put in the number, the letters, and have us look like it's 2018 with announcements and graphics and showing things, and maybe and spend a few dollars and get some real professional pictures taken. Tristan does an amazing job with a lot of stuff, but I want us to do a little better than iPhone photos that are up there. Just again, to try to kind of have that look and feel. If we could, I'm not talking Haverty's furniture, I'm not talking brand new leather, but that area where we've got a couple tables where you walk in, could we even go to get a lesser, expensive, couch and love seat and something with some lighting down there. It looks more attractive again with the monitor up there. Those are just one of the things I was also going to talk about was Keith's office had black looked like trash bags over it, and I was going to suggest that maybe we put like frosting across at least half of it. Then I come in today and he's got beautiful curtains up. So
did you open the door and look inside?
I did not.
Oh, he built a divider. back there.
So his ears
And
must have been
got
ringing,
a-
but I had no.
And then the girls, or he did, I don't know which, painted a big strip of light blue around the top. It's, I don't know what you call it, wainscoting, but it's up at the top.
Mhm.
And then he's got this sliding wooden, it kind of looks like a farm door.
Yeah.
And he's gonna put his maps and everything back there behind storage.
I just kind of pass around and just, just stop when he gets my granddaughter.
I was
And the next person go the
amazed.
next way.
Gosh, it
because
was-
there's 5 or 6 pictures down there. and
It's
stuff that-
beautiful. So just painting that lobby down there with, and I think staff chose the colors, didn't they?
Yeah.
And some of the offices inside the city hall downstairs, staff has chosen. Ty's room, his office, I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, Ty's office has modern stuff, and I think
But-
the offices, but I'm talking, when you walk in, even like these pictures back here, they just, I think it's time that we update. And along that same thing my thought was with our website. We have a fantastic website that has improved 900% over the last 2-3 years. It's great for city business. It's great for new residents who want to find out how to get water, how to, such and such. And I go back again to where I went to, the ICSC conference, and we had our brochure, and it was right on par. But I brought back some stuff that, what some other cities are doing with this, and my thought is that we look at, and something maybe that we would bring in a intern. Again, I'm not talking new staff. Someone that could work with Tristan, an intern in graphic design and that knows websites, and we have a website specifically dedicated to promoting our city that talks about, this is where I thought we could have a conversation at another meeting, but talk about what fast facts do we want to show on this website, what quality of life pieces, proximity, the incentives, and kind of started on it, written a little narrative, but so I think this could be a council project to really promote. One of the things was, as I went around and talked to people and said, hey, I want to talk to you about moving to Bel Aire, Kansas. They go, uh-huh. It's near Wichita, and they went, uh-huh. They just, that image is still out there. So even if we had a drone footage that shows where Sunflower Commerce Park is, and then shows how close we are to 254 and to K96 and Interstate 35 and the Turnpike, the rail access, really showing that and using some of the language kind of taken from the best practices here. And again, that's something I'd like, if you guys are all on board with this, that we could, so it's us coming up with what's on that, but just a way to really promote so that as we take this next step forward as a city, we have our best foot forward, and we're promoting, and we're bragging about ourselves, dang it, because we need to. I think we do, and that to continue to get interest in that. Then the fourth and final item, and Ty, do we want to talk about the proposal for AV upgrades?
Yeah, I can mention a little bit. I've got it on the council agenda, but we've talked about, Facebook Live, video streaming on the website, because we know less and less people have Cox anymore, and that's the only way that we can use our cable channels if you have Cox, and most don't. So Tristan has been looking at, and we know we've got other issues. We know that the quality's not that great on the cable channel. We know that people have issues with hearing you at the council, that the cable cuts out, all those types of things. So there's a lot of issues along that same line with our booth back there. And so Tristan actually has been looking at and meeting with Derby and Andover, because they're doing the same thing that we're doing. They all want to go to Facebook Live, video streaming, everything that we're talking about doing, they're doing. And so she's looked at a couple different AV companies that can do upgrades and things like that. The one that she's recommending is Wichita, I forget the name of it, but it's Wichita Aviation Services or whatever. Anyway, they have been working with Andover and Derby to upgrade theirs as well. It's not cheap. We're looking at about $20,000. But what they will do is they'll basically come in and rebuild our whole booth. They'll put in new mics, new cameras. They said that right now, the way our system works is you really have to know what you're doing or you can't operate it. So they'll make it very simple. They'll make it so that it's high quality, so that we can video stream it immediately. At the same time it's going out on a cable channel, it'll go out on Facebook Live and our website. So there's a lot of things that will do to, as the mayor had said, increase our marketing and just getting our information
And transparency.
out. Yeah, and then the other thing is, by doing that, it allows us to do or increase our video services that we're doing. So we've talked about having a mayor's minute or manager's moment or something like that, where whatever the question of the day is, or people that are asking about what's going on, because we get a lot of feedback from next door and those places. And so we would have the camera system here that we could record something like that and then put it out on Facebook and everything. So,
And also on our website too, so people can watch our meetings in real time.
yep.
Which you
So,
cannot do right now.
it was something that we have talked about. We know we've got issues. She's looked into it. We'll have the proposal to you to actually look at. Now, of course, there's cheaper ways to do it. I mean, there's another company that could do something for like $10,000. It's not nearly what Wichita Audio is doing. The other thing that we like is that the other ones work more closely with churches. Wichita Audio works with other cities. And so obviously it's going to, like we know in our own lives, a lot of times what you get what you pay for. And so if we really want to make a statement, make an upgrade, then it's going to cost. Or we want to try to patch something together. That's just something that we're looking at. We'll have some more information for you at the council meeting. But
Again, these are things that, looking at that, just, to enhance our image, and it's something that I would like us to maybe dedicate our next workshop to really talking about some specifics. And again, my thinking is this is not something that would even hit our budget that we could do, but I think is sorely needed in my opinion. You guys may have completely different ideas. Those are my thoughts. I'd be curious to hear from each of you. So again, just to recap, sitting on RFP, updating our audio visual capabilities and streaming, freshen up this building, and look at an intern that would do some modern graphics and website separate from our city one.
A separate website?
Mhm.
Okay.
That would be used solely as, when we go to ICSC and when we're talking to potential developers who are starting to come in and ask questions, and that all the questions that they're asking that that have what's your traffic count, what's your incomes, what are you close to, it's there, and this is what I'm seeing other cities that are doing and other cities are scrambling to do, that are trying to get business.
Well, Mayor, one of my thoughts is, I'm not for the furniture down in the lobby, because it's really an office building. What would you think if we asked the schools, clear out all that stuff that we saw the pictures of, and a holiday they come in and decorate that corner. Like we put that huge Christmas tree that was donated to the city over there in that one corner. Well, that fits fine, but if you put something else there, where are you gonna put that big tree? But if they came in, say for Valentine's Day, and decorated down there, and Thanksgiving, Christmas, what other holidays we got?
Well, I'll tell you, my thinking with the furniture was, and I go back, what was it, a few months ago, there was a business that came in here on, it was like a private jet that was bigger than any private jet I've seen. And they're leaning on round cafeteria tables down there.
Well, I mean,
waiting
get
to
rid
go
of
in
them.
Right, but instead of just, decoration, I like your idea, and that's kind of where I want it bright, but move something, professional, modern, so that when these big wigs come in that are making the decision, and if they need to step out from our community room, and the community room I think needs an update too.
Yeah.
They can, and they need to take a phone call. They're not leaning up against a wall that hasn't been painted in 12 years and elbow against a round table.
And there's other certain things we can do down there as far as putting some softer features in there, because the echoing is horrible.
Oh, it's horrible.
You can't even talk in the hallway because it's just so bad.
You can hear it all over
and
the
just
building.
some simple, like you said, brightly colored, nice colored baffling down there to soften that too, and just make it so you can talk to the person that's right beside you without just, it's so bad.
Well, I'm in favor of doing some light refreshes here in the city building, some low cost, spring cleaning, that sounds excellent. Maybe a fresh coat of paint, that also sounds great. I'm not as interested in making really large investments in remodeling. I hear what you're saying about business people coming in here. And I think our city building is great. I think it puts a pretty good image forward for Bel Aire. And at the end of the day, I think that the businesses that are going to come in here when they're evaluating Bel Aire, they're going to appreciate our city building, but they're really going to be making their business decisions based on the economics of their business here in Bel Aire, not so much on some of the softer features of our city building, I hope.
No, I didn't hear anything about remodeling. It was more refreshing, modernization type things, like with
replacing a bulletin board with a
right.
A little bit of
flat
paint,
screen
a little bit of
TV.
spring cleaning, that sounds great. I think that
Paint goes a long way.
Good ideas.
Except I don't want to do it.
No.
Building construction.
It's a work
It's
day.
like 12, 13 years old,
So,
and
I mean,
nothing's been done to it.
It's time for a paint job, bright and freshen. I mean, it's time. I mean, I couldn't tell you how many times my wife has repainted rooms in the last 12 years. So
Yep.
I come home and something's painted.
Yep.
But if you go downstairs and look at it in the offices, I don't know, maybe Chai chose your colors, but
Well,
we've got some
I
good
think this is-
staff that
Yeah, I think, but
they do fantastic
absolutely.
in painting.
I think this is just putting a fresh face on the city,
Yeah.
really, because there's a lot of people that come in that won't ever go into Ty's office. That's for sure. They'll
Well,
go in
well,
the main office and.
Yeah, let me ask this, and then I do need to let you guys know too, that the second Tuesday in September, which is when our workshop is, I'm actually out of town, so I would like to see if we could find another date to meet in September. But what I would envision, if you guys are on board, is maybe we take a walk around City Hall and a big clipboard, and Jeff writes down all of our notes as we spit them out, just, that type of stuff where we kind of think about someone who's never been here that walks in. And we've been to other cities where you walk in and, whoa, this is awesome, and again, not looking to spend anything that's, currently in the budget, not.
So, I don't even think it's a
Right.
big amount at all.
It's not at all, no.
Yeah, I mean, we can take Jim's picture down tonight. I mean,
That'd be an improvement, right?
Jeff, you're bad.
That was
Sorry.
bad, but professional headshots too of our staff too, that's on, this new website, so, city manager, here's his picture, city attorney, council members, this is.
Well, and what's interesting is when the mayor had mentioned that to me, Tristan and I were meeting with one of the agents from that's marketing Central Park, and we said, okay, you know, that's his degree, and that's what he does is marketing. And so, you know, what can we do? We're city people, we know government, so tell us what we can do to better market. And he actually brought up, he said, you know, we said, well, how's our website? He said, your website's great, because he lives in Bel Aire, lives up in the Landing, and he said, your website is great for me as a citizen. I can go look up stuff, I can see your codes, I can do that. But if I'm looking to move to Bel Aire, you know, really does. I mean, it answers questions for citizens, but it doesn't jump out at me as, this is why I need to move to Bel Aire.
Well, and a lot of the stuff that Tristan does can be involved in that with, with the, I mean, from the events to, you know, the bike paths to the parks. I mean, there's so much that could be added to that to really give exposure to the positives of Bel Aire.
Yep. So he kind of made a suggestion of, you know, what about having a second website of, you know, whatever the term is, move to Bel Aire or whatever.
Come
and,
home
to Bel Aire.
Yeah, and then have all the stuff right on the front page that talks about the schools and, you know, this everything,
Colleges,
events,
hospitals,
and,
yeah.
all of that kind of stuff that someone that's really looking to move here, they're going to find everything that they want. They're not really looking to see how do I pay my utility bill today. I'm just thinking about why do I want to move to Bel Aire. So he actually suggested that when
Especially
the
when
mayor
they see
mentioned it
utility
too.
bill.
I thought, well, you know, I think that's probably something we do really seriously need to look at.
Yeah.
You know, one thing I want to make sure that we don't lose is, I hear what you're saying, Mr. Mayor, about the upgrades, and there's an aspect to that where there's that kind of that small town charm, and that certainly, I don't want to lose that. And
I'm not talking about having state-of-the-art sound system and all that down and laser
I
lights.
know. I just,
you know?
I think that always needs to be on that balance on the other side of that. So I think we can support upgrading as we go and cleaning and doing the things that you're talking about. I mean, that sounds like a good idea. I just want to make sure that we're staying grounded too, and because that really, I mean, you're asking about how to market. Part of what we need to market is our charm as a small city, and as we continue to develop our identity. I think that always has to be there. That has to be one of the pillars of the city, is that we're a city of the future, but we're a small, charming city, you know.
With the respect for the past.
Yeah. So, and again, I want to go back, you know, I'm thinking, like I said, some type of a more business-like, maybe it's not a couch, maybe it's a couple like business chairs, like it's like a waiting room type thing, and paint and, you know, flat screen TV that replaces a lot of the stuff down there, updated photos, paint, I'm not knocking, suggest we knock down walls and you know, all that stuff.
I hear you.
Yeah, so I appreciate, you know, it sounds like we all kind of agree that something needs to be done, but if we could have that conversation maybe at our next workshop, and I think it might behoove us to, you know, take a walk around even with a clipboard or something, kind of go back and just brainstorming, all of us, because we are the governing body. We're the ones who can control and promote the image and what it is. So,
well, and the nice thing is, you know, you all have your vision that you're wanting to create for us. We work here every day, so we come in and we don't pay attention to the scratch anymore because it's been there. And you guys come in and say, well, why don't you fix that? So I didn't even notice that, you know, because it's been there so long. So it is very helpful for you to go around and say, you know, what about this? What about that? Because we see it every day, and then we just kind of block things out. So
Yeah, but when you come in and look at these new rooms that are painted and everybody's moved around, it's an eye opener, and it's nice.
Yep. And those are things that we just did ourselves. And,
I know.
you know, we can.
Now, I don't want to push a whole lot of stuff off on the staff to do.
no,
this
I'm not
either,
talking
but,
about it at all. So, and I like,
They have good ideas.
and I like Councilmember Smith and Councilmember Hawes' idea too, that we can do something about the echo down there.
Oh, yes.
Well, I can hear, when he's talking, I can hear his echo.
Yeah.
From
Maybe we need to hang some deer heads on the wall or something.
That's kind of home.
Budweiser signs.
Wait till they
I'm
get
just kidding.
in a fight in the community room and you're sitting in where Keith is, and I'm thinking, are they having a fist fight in there? What's going on?
Well, it does sound, because you can hear,
And then
and we've had to ask people to shut the door.
The cops came running down, and I thought, oh my goodness, they're close to my office.
All right,
It
so
was bad.
we'll have Ty send out RFPs that we can bring back sometime in the near future to see if we want to move forward on that.
Could you clarify that, Mr. Mayor? The RFPs, how does that tie into what we currently have? You're talking for the park design?
For the master park, the gathering spot that we've talked about.
Right.
Just to see, how much is phase one going to cost?
Well, is that moving forward with what we currently have? I mean,
The current design.
the current design, or you're talking about additional designs?
No. Moving forward with what we have, the next step is let's find out how much it's going to cost.
Okay. Because I have some concerns about the current. I mean, there's.
Yeah, I
things
think
I'd
we
like to
all
input.
have. Yeah. And again, before, I think that's definitely cart before the horse. But just what is the phase one, and what would be a suggested timeline? Certainly, I would strongly encourage that we get major citizens' input as well as what do they want in the park. We all have different ideas and have input. That could be another big brainstorming and, throwing it all up there.
Okay, but I guess I'm not clear. What is an RFP? Where does that put us in terms of going down the list of, I guess, our schedule or outlook?
Well, let's say we all decided we wanted to build the park tomorrow.
Right.
Where do we start? What does it cost? How much? That's, putting in specifics and numbers and timelines and costs, the questions that we'll need to talk about.
Is it normal to do an RFP before you've nailed down kind of your requirements?
Typically, the way I see it working is that so we've got this vision of because there was citizen input on what this gathering spot's going to look like, and like we said, it didn't get to the point where this is going to be the amphitheater. This is what it's going to look like. It was, you probably ought to put an amphitheater up here, but maybe it could go over there, or things like that. And we would recommend, you're looking at maybe $4 million. I can't remember the exact number, but $4 million.
Like I said, the splash pad, I think, was beyond off the chart.
And then you got 3 phases. You break it down. So what we would do is we'd put together a request for proposals, and we send it out to engineers, and we say, okay, here's the master plan. It's just a plan. We want to consider a phase one of that plan. And we think that, phase one should be in the $1 million range or something like that. And so we want, what would you charge us? This is the proposal. What would you charge us to come up with what phase one will be? What does phase one encompass? And part of that is the public outreach. Part of it is we want some public meetings for the citizens to come in and say, if we're going to do this and we're going to do phase one, these are the things that we think have to be in phase one. Because you had some things that you suggested that, especially phase one would be right across from City Hall, because that's kind of the way you grow. So they would actually do the public input and start putting it all together. And then the actual, knowing what it is that we want in phase one, then they would say, okay, phase one, public says they want these things, they come to you, you would say, okay, we agree with that. This would be phase one. The cost is going to be 1.2 million, and for that cost, you get all these things. And then at that point, you're there with the next phase would be the actual construction of it. So you don't have to move forward with it, you just know what it is. And so like the mayor was saying then, I had some investors that were in a month or so ago looking at some parcels over here, and I showed them this is what you know, the kind of the plan is, and they said, that's great, we love that, that's what everybody's going to, but when are you gonna build it? And I said, well, you know, we kind of, when are you gonna build, or when are you gonna buy? And they're like, well, you know, we're not gonna, you know, if we're gonna get serious about that, we wanna see that you're gonna be serious about it.
And that's why I kind of came up with the idea of asking our city manager to do this, because I think there's just too many unknowns right now. How do we get from the beautiful design that we all have some say on to actual, and do we?
You know, I've said before, I'm all in favor of this park idea if we have some investors to go alongside with us. And I know you said that you had a couple of groups that showed some interest in that. I don't know if there's any more discussion in that area or not.
Right.
But as I've talked with people around the country and looked at some of these kind of things, I think we would be really remiss to go down this road without some investors going along with us to do it. I have seen some of these things become ghost towns. They build buildings and they sit empty for years. I don't want to see that here. I want to see us do it and bring it up where it's actually profitable for everybody and a win-win. And I wouldn't want to see us have that ghost town. So I think we'd be very wise to get that going. The other thing that in some of the discussions I've had with folks is that typically these things need to be spearheaded more from the investor side than from the city side, especially in the design, because they'll have inputs in that design that are non-negotiables to them. And if you move ahead with a project and they're less inclined to be willing to partner with you because they say, thanks, but that's really not our vision, you know.
And again, I think this, you know, this is just simply asking them to get, you know, RFPs out there so that we can, you know those numbers before we talk to somebody or before we move forward.
I guess my concern is those numbers may be dramatically different based on what the overall vision is for the park. And I think what I'm hearing from around the table is maybe we're not all aligned on what the details of that vision are, which could dramatically impact what the proposal would be from an engineer, and especially if we're looking to bring investors along, which I think I agree with Councilmember Vinage. It's the only way to move forward here. They are going to have a lot of input, and they're going to have a vision that'll need to be factored into that before we get into any detailed engineering or proposals for engineering.
Yeah, and I think, and that's why I think, and I really support the idea of phases. So what I was thinking about would be the phase one, which is kind of what the plan called for, was just really what's across from City Hall. You know, additional parking, maybe a splash pad, you know, maybe starting some type of area
Farmers
for,
market.
Yeah, farmers market,
Yeah,
those
we have
types of
the pavilion.
things. So really, you're not at that point. Phase one, you're not really going to the extent of what are, you know, you may put a walking path in there, kind of similar to what they had, that oval, but you're not getting to the point where these other businesses are. You're impacting what their design is going to be. It's really going to be close to City Hall. The other piece of it, like you said, is your future phases. Then I think that's when we have to look at like a community improvement district or something like that, that overlays where you actually get the businesses to help pay for that through the sales tax. And from what I'm hearing from businesses, if they get that kind of, you know, a place, a natural gathering place where people can eat some ice cream and look at a pond and listen to some music going on, they don't have a problem with that extra tax. And then they can have a little input in those next phases as well as to what they think would be important. So I think the way that plan kind of came together is good. Is, you know, you have your phases, you start with whatever phase one would be, tying it into City Hall, and what citizens think that they need. I went and drove around Central Park over at Andover a couple weeks ago, and you know, their amphitheater is sponsored by a bank, And I think that's something that we would want to look at. And I know that part of the questions that we had for the bike master plan was from the engineering firms or the consultants was, okay, you're going to help us create this plan. How are we going to fund that? Are there grants available? Is there things like that? And I think that's the other piece that we would put in this proposal is, okay, we're looking at phase one, but we also want help on how do we get a bank to help pay for something or sponsor the splash pad or something like that, so that we have investors or people donate to help pay for something.
Well, it's the same with, my idea is to have the 100% ADA compliant park, playground, not park, but playground. And there's a lot of grants out there to help do that, but you have to have that, and you have to have that plan. You have to have it, the breakdown of what it's going to cost before you can even write that grant proposal for that. So, doing this is going to help us do a lot of the future things too. I mean, there's a lot of things, we've talked about the ideas of incorporating into the park as far as, I don't know if you want to call it like a legacy walkway where you sell pavers to the citizens of Bel Aire, and you have the names of people on it, or, the Smith family. You have your own paver, so every time you walk in the park, it's me. Things like that. Benches in the park that are dedicated to the memory of somebody donates the $250, $500, how much ever it costs, and the name's engraved in it. I think there's a lot of opportunities to help fund the park, but without the plan, we can't really move forward. You know what I mean? It's just it's getting it set. From what I understand, it's getting it set to what we can and can't do, and what is going to cost and what it's not going to cost, and then we can move forward from there. We can say, let's do the first phase. You can say, well, what are we going to get if we do the first phase? We can say, maybe Ty can call his investors and go, look, if we break ground tomorrow, will you commit? If we have that plan.
If you don't, I'm calling the next person.
I guess one of my thoughts is, and I'm going to speak to just the phase one plan, and the phase one is the park area, the recreational type area, and the reason that's phase one is, as the mayor talks about in his research, the businesses are looking for what's the gathering spot, and I think a simplified version of the park that we currently have I know there's a couple different designs, but I think we need to look even simpler. And in my view, what is the most value, best bang for our buck type of going about this? And I'd like to see, or even make a design that focuses on one of the things that bugs me about the current design is what a gathering space is a place for people to linger and stay. The current way the sidewalk comes around, it crosses the parking lot. You can't just do laps around the walking area because it crosses the parking lot.
Yeah, I don't think any of us here think that what was presented is the final.
Okay, because that's my concern. Because
But you gotta have the cost of what it costs with them knowing that we wanna move stuff around.
I'd like to see a simplified version, and I could even draw one up myself, of the basics, minimalist park gathering place, what it looks like. And in my mind, that includes a splash pad, a play area, and then a big green space. And perhaps a walking path around that, but the idea is, what's the most simple thing that we could come up with that people can go, I just think of it from my perspective. I want to take my family for a few hours and hang out and, let the kids play, and what are they going to do? And am I going to be able to see them? One of the great things about having the police department connected to our city hall here is that, we can locate, it kind of all naturally is, but we can maintain that there's an unobstructed view from the police station side of City Hall into the park, you know, just from a safety perspective. But I think having a large green area so that, I don't think we need to look at building any sort of buildings other than perhaps a bathroom. But I don't think we need a pavilion other than maybe like a structure, shade. We need shade and some trees. But we need a green space. We need, a kids area, a splash pad, and it doesn't have to be, designed in a conflated, expensive way. I think it could be done in a cheaper design.
And that's something I want to say. You and I are 100% on what first phase is. Again, we're not talking exactly like what our manager said. Looking at phases, and that's why again, this RFP is just simply, saying here's what we want.
Mm-hmm.
These different types of things. Be a la carte. We can kind of, and that way we know before we move forward. And again, I go back to all the marketing pieces.
Mm-hmm.
What I've learned when we talk to these retail places, they have a formula. What are your rooftops? What is your traffic count? What is your median income? And they have minimums. And if we don't fit those three, we don't even have a conversation. Downtown Wichita has been begging Panera to be built there. They're not coming because it doesn't fit. You don't want to know what, I'm not going to say, is paying Dave & Buster's to come here. You don't want to know what Johnson County paid IKEA to move there. We don't want to get to where we're, that money. We've kind of made it clear, hey, the first domino that falls, we're going to take care of you. But this is just one more of those, okay, we have two of the three plus.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I'm, looking at all of this, and again, I go back to, we're pro-growth, we're pro-business. How do we get that market out? How do we, how do we spotlight ourselves? So, I'll just say, Councilman Elsoff, what you just described as phase one is exactly what my noggin was thinking.
Well, and let me say this, I agree with Councilman Elsoff, because it does hit certain criteria for me as far as giving different options for all of Bel Aire. It's not just like a playground. It's not just a walking space, green space. But this gives us the opportunity to do so much more for the citizens, just little things. But as Ty put it, the worst case scenario is there's a beautiful park for the citizens. But right now we currently hold our events at the rec center. It's not really set up to hold events. It's the green space there is just not really conducive for what we'd like to have. I mean, if we had the big green space, there's movies in the park that you could do.
Right, you can convert it into things. You can have. You don't have to have an amphitheater. You can have it. Someone can put up a stage.
Put up a screen and have, you can put up a temporary stage and have concerts in the park. I mean, there's a lot of things you can do when you have a space, and right now Bel Aire just doesn't have a space to do a lot of these things. Right. The outfields of the ball fields are not set up to have people throw blankets down and sit there all night. I mean,
and we've been inside the rec center when you can't get too many booths in there, and
yeah.
we've got to go around there. So, but again, all I'm asking is just you guys' blessing to let them ask for RFPs.
I give it.
Me too.
And then, again, at the September workshop, then would ask that we'll kind of use that as brainstorming to talk about what we want on a new website and marketing material, and talk about what we want to do to kind of update this.
I thought you said you wouldn't be here on that day.
Well, I'm
We're
going
going
to
to
ask, I'm hoping that we can find another.
Come on, let's go. It's 8:30.
Okay. I'm almost done. And then on our agenda at our next meeting is going to be this proposal to upgrade our AV equipment, which is something that, again, wants to look like it's 2018.
I just want to say I just want to share something
Please.
Real quick, and it's directly related to the park. So this past Friday, I had my wife actually went to the stable to ride a horse that we have, and she had basically left me with the kids, so I had the 4 kids with me, and I had the opportunity to come up with a couple hours to go do something with the 4 kids. And it was hot. This was Friday evening. It was hot. And I drove them up to Heston. And Heston, they have a great splash pad there. And we had they have a big green space. They've got a big hill in the middle of their park, which I don't know how they got that hill, but it's really awesome.
Gotta put
It's like
fill dirt somewhere.
yeah. And we had a picnic on the top of the hill.
Nice.
And the kids played they got a splash pad and play area there, and like, you know, I just, the whole time I'm thinking like, it's, you know, it would be great if that were in my backyard, or, you know, here in Bel Aire, and you know, that's the draw, it's there, it's just natural, you know, I'm living that dream, right? Like, but I gotta leave Bel Aire to fulfill it, and you know, I know a lot of, you know, if we want to nurture the you know, the young families with kids, you know, we've got to become that kind of, you know, I'm not saying that's exactly what we have to have, but I'm saying that's the draw. You wanna take your kids somewhere and let them play, and you know, the splash pad is nice because when you go to a pool, you got to be, I mean, 1 parent and 4 kids in a pool. Go through that scenario in your mind. You don't want to go in the pool. You want a splash pad where no one's going to drown.
Yeah, but you still got to have something for everybody.
Well, I agree.
Because your children are going to grow up,
It
just
is,
like
yeah.
mine did and
And the-
his did.
Exactly.
yours.
I
And
agree.
again, with the green space, that allows the
Yep.
movies on the lawn, that allows the, you know, talent competition, that allows the, you know, music, that our festivals to have a space to go to, and on and on. So.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fully supportive of a park. My big concern is just how do we pay for it? You know,
Right.
if we had lots and lots of money, I'd love to go spend $4 million on a park. But I really connect with your comments on, if we're going to start looking at something, let's think as simple as we can, minimum viable product to attract a business, and ideally, really exclusively with a business partner. How do we get started there? Just some green space and some parking maybe could go a long way, and maybe get us a little bit further from that $1 million mark.
All right. So,
Like I said, with the plan, you know, maybe we can figure other ways out to pay for it with the
Yeah.
grants. Because like I said, the 100% ADA compliant grants, I kind of looked into it, but you can't even get close to researching it without a plan.
Yeah.
Because how much
Yeah.
did we already pay for that plan? It's quite a
I
bit.
think that was like 30,000 to get us there. So, you know, that's why I'm guesstimating around that to actually design phase 1.
again, I go back to, this is so this RP will hopefully turn our unknowns into, if it comes back that phase 1 is gonna cost $4 million, I think we all know, okay,
Yeah.
we'll shelve this discussion.
Yeah.
You know, because I've given you guys my word that this is not something I will promote if it involves taking money away from streets or raising taxes, because we've made that very loud and
Right.
clear. So, we'll
I
do
wouldn't
that.
go for it.
And so, like I said, our September workshop, we'll wear comfy shoes and we'll do some brainstorming on website categories and freshen up. I like that idea. So, okay. What else was I gonna do? Okay.
September workshop, you said you
Yes.
couldn't be here?
Yeah, and that's, we don't have, we can decide that at our meeting, our
Okay.
21st meeting, but just, I'll come have some other ideas, if you guys can all have your calendar on that.
Better come up.
In the meantime, again, kind of speaking of all these things freshening up, we talked about, I know, Elsoff and I have talked about, I think I've even said I'd take you out there and I haven't, but, you know, what would you guys think about setting up some evening where we could go tour CCUA, where we could go tour some of the Bel Aire property? How many of you guys have ever been to the water tower, been in the water tower, seen our storage room out there? How many of you have ever been to our, you know, really our rec center, our senior center, our, you know, public works, all of that? And I think that'll really help again as we move forward to making decisions, because we're,
Yeah.
you know, to see the equipment and the good stuff and how they take care of it, and some things that may make, you know, no agenda, but just, I think it'd be good that all of us have a really good idea of what our city property and all that is. And that's something.
I think it's a good idea, but let's do it in the fall when it's cooler, because it's hot.
That time's approaching.
Yeah.
I know, but it's
That'd be
still
maybe
hot in
not.
September.
So Ty, if that's something you maybe want to think about,
Sure.
you know,
Maybe like
Yeah,
a
that's a good
Saturday
idea.
then, or is evening better? Saturday morning or?
I don't think you have enough time in the evening, do you, Ty?
Well,
We
then
always ran
maybe we
out
break
of
it up a
time.
couple, you know.
the fall will be getting dark too.
Yeah.
Yeah, a dedicated Saturday could work, just.
But you could probably
Yeah.
separate CCUA
Yeah.
and,
Do it
and
separate.
do it separate.
Yeah.
And show them where the wells are and that. It's interesting.
Yeah, so, okay,
Do
we'll
you,
look at it.
do you have time to just talk or provide a little bit of an update on the CCUA stuff? I know Ty's report this week mentioned some needed sewer upgrades, and I've also heard, some potential capacity constraints are coming up from Councilman Elshoff's report. I don't have as many details as you guys do. I'd be interested in if you could just
Yeah.
share a little bit there to bring us all up
I
to
would
speed
pull
on how
some-
that might impact us.
Some of, I think I hopefully have all that stuff.
Yeah, I have some of that documentation.
It's,
with
you know, CCUA, just again, quick history lesson, and I'm gonna ask Ty to correct me if I'm wrong here, but, yeah, at one point, there were gonna be 4 municipalities that were gonna build CCUA. In the end, there were 2, which is why the debt level is so high. We currently get, and this is actually a good thing, our water is serviced by the city of Wichita and CCUA. CCUA has, in my opinion, kicked the can down the road about as far as it can go. We are constantly repairing and replacing pumps that should have burned out 3 years ago. At our last meeting, we're talking about buying old fire stations built in the 1950s. That'll be an upgrade for their offices, if that tells you something.
Whoopee.
So, again, this will be good for when you see it, all of our, one of the big sludgy things, it was in our,
Sewer.
the sedimentation tank.
yeah, the tanks, that was in our last, at the end of each CCUA meeting, they do, some training, which is really neat. They explained it, and if I can find that, I'm gonna forward it to you, because it.
I got that.
Oh, okay, then there you go, yeah, it really talks about how these things work, but, yeah, capacity as we grow, there's gonna be a demand for water. We're hearing, Wichita is raising their water rates, we've got sewer equipment and lines that it's not a matter of if, but when they're going to fail. And that date's getting closer and closer, so that the TAC met, and the TAC is made up of basically city managers and CCUA director and a couple
Yeah.
attorneys.
Engineer.
That will then recommend come back to the CCUA, where right now, what came out, same email that, there's gonna be probably a sewer rate hike. It's just,
And the tough thing is, and the mayor was actually right, exactly right, what he was saying. If we don't, KDHE regulates sewer systems and treatment facilities. And if you get out of compliance, you can be fined, and some of the fines can be $15,000 a day. So,
there's one municipality that had a $370,000, and they were what, was it 24 days? It was in Kentucky, yeah.
Yeah, so you've got that side of it that you have to consider, and like the mayor said, nothing's been done since it was built 20 years ago roughly, or something like that.
And they were pretty much built it
And-
with used equipment then.
Yeah, and it was a design build, and that's where you get in your arguments of whether that's the best way to do something. Design build, they're gonna try to be able to as cheap as they can. Well, then they cut corners where they can, because that's how they make their money. But in the long term, then we have things that we didn't get installed that should have been, or that they're giving out already because it wasn't the best quality. So that's kind of where you get arguments of, is design build the best way to go or not?
Because we still owe a lot of money on the
yes.
treatment plant, right? So we have a lot of debt, and so I guess I'm just trying to figure out, how do you end up in a situation where your debt goes for a longer period of time than the useful life of the equipment? are we really at end of life on this
Let's have
stuff?
an
or is-
off-camera conversation. But-
Yeah, yeah, and again, the cost of that stuff is so outrageous that a lot of, you typically do go 30 years. And so some of your, your pump motors, because of the environment that they're in, may only last 10 years. And so, and the other thing is, which, I hate to mention, but, and it's not just Bel Aire or Park City, it's Wichita, it's everybody else, is, everybody hates to pay their utility bills. And, if you raise them, nobody likes paying more. And so you don't raise them. And then what happens is then you don't replace stuff. So then 10 years down the road, because you've never raised a rate, everything's given out now. So
When we did our last water rate study, that was only water, it wasn't sewer, is that true?
that was sewer as well.
Sewer as well, okay.
Yep. And that's why another reason that it's going to be very important to actually do this sewer study, which you included in the budget, the sewer water study, because now that we know that, okay, in the next couple years, CCUA could be looking at $20 million in improvements on the sewer side, we can have the study include that. Okay, so if we know in 20 years it's going to be X amount, is there something we can do to, next year to start helping with that? Those types of things. The other issue on the water side, the mayor was just talking about the sewer side, the other issue on the water side is that the plant is not big enough for, the water treatment plant is not big enough for us to get 100% of our water from them. So when we, and I was here when we negotiated our last water agreement, because there was no way we could switch to CCUA. We had to have, and we have to have Wichita water. So that's going to be another question that CCUA board's going to have to consider. I think our Wichita water agreement expires, do you remember, Jackie, is it 20, it's like in 8 years, roughly.
I was gonna say 2026.
Yeah, so CCUA is going to have to consider, do they want to increase the size of the plant so that we can get all of our water from them? And it may be a decision that the board or the council needs to think about too, is do we want to, because with that comes debt. We know that Wichita's raising their water rates. I think Betty said, what, 10% next year for
$10
customers?
this month, and it'll double the first of the year.
But I think I understand that's
TV said.
a fraction of what we're paying Wichita right now on a cost per gallon basis, right?
Yes, if you figure in,
Including our debt service.
yeah, Wichita water's cheaper. So now what is that gonna do over the next 2 years, 5 years, 10 years? We don't know.
Right.
But
They
that's a
could very well
discussion.
Raise their rates to cover
Yep.
new costs that they have.
Yep, so that's another issue. Mayor was talking about sewer. We'll also be thinking about water in the next 6 years or so. What do we want to do? What's CCUA want to do? Sorry, Mayor, got us off topic.
Well, that context helps, thank you for that.
Okay.
There was something else you were gonna talk, oh.
Yeah, last thing,
snakes.
yes, some of us have received calls, I received a call today from the
Did you get one?
exotic animal
Oh, God.
place that opened up. What they want to do is they want to expand into the 2 businesses next, so it'd be a much larger footprint in our city, which is, a good thing for business. And I have to put my personal thoughts and feelings, because I absolutely positively hate snakes, and I'm not a fan of alligators. I but
I'm with you.
but we got to look at business opportunities and taxes and more people coming in. And right now our current ordinance does not allow what they want to do in the adjoining 2 spaces. They really like the location. They like Bel Aire. What they want to do is have that space where it would be kind of an educational kind of sounded to me kind of like the room where you walk into a Great Plains Nature Center, where you kind of learn, not a zoo obviously, but some space. And they would have some reptiles that the Sedgwick County Zoo does not have, and they would use that as education places, and also then it would be a, venue where they could have birthday parties and meetings being held and stuff, which is something that we hear, requested for that. Again, it may not be for me. I don't like snakes. I don't like reptiles. And what I told him was, obviously it'd have to be up to the governing body if we want to change our ordinance to allow that. I suggested that, we, maybe hear from him a little bit more about specifically what it is that he wants to do. I personally plan to go down there and talk with him and take a tour with him. He invited, yes, I'm going to do it. And again, I got to put my personal feelings aside. If it was, puppies and kitties, I'd have no problem with this. But this is a man who has a growing business. He has over 40 employees. The 2 employees that would run this side that he's talking about actually currently are employed at the Sedgwick County Zoo in the reptile house. I would move over, and again, it'd be a thing to get some attention and get, and I told him we want to hear all about his safety plan, all about make sure that he is properly insured.
How much tax money do we get off of that building?
Off of that one, I couldn't tell you, but
I don't think we get that much.
Well, if you get 3 more of the spaces and now it's full, we're going to get a lot more than we're getting now.
And if he keeps growing, he might need to buy some land
Bingo.
and build a building here in Bel
And
Aire.
did he also say volunteer to bring
This
the
corner of
snakes?
45th and
There sure is.
Woodlawn that-
Yeah, there we go, yeah.
Is he gonna
I like
bring
the way
those
you
to
did
the
that. Will he
council?
bring a snake to a meeting? No.
Now
They did come
that,
to the
he
National
did
Night Out.
ask me
Uh-huh.
that,
Over there.
about bringing
Yeah.
snakes and
Yeah, they're
alligators.
for now. Lizard and snake.
Oh, did
And
you?
I said, if you do, I will excuse myself from the
Because we're
bench,
moving.
because I'm not gonna sit there and
Yeah, kids
have
enjoy that.
his things crawling around. Ugh.
They had a big turtle there as well.
Yeah, that's
The
right.
You
National
went
Night
in?
Out. No, at the National Night Out, they were there
Yeah,
with
he
a
did a
few
little thing.
animals.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Yeah.
I'm glad I left.
The kids were really enjoying it. I got to visit with them just a little bit, and I was glad they were there.
Ugh.
See them.
Yeah, I would ask that maybe he do it via pictures.
I did have a bit of a conversation with him yesterday evening, and, he's talking about alligators and some pythons, but pythons that are not allowed, so they're the more dangerous ones. And, the way I put it to him is, I want to see some very clear safety issues, plans there, because I don't want to put citizens of Bel Aire at any risk of safety issues with these type of critters. The reason that they're not allowed is because they are known to have some problems, and
Yeah, we've
there's
heard
been-
about the problem, in Florida where a python farm got hit by a hurricane and now
Right.
they're all out. Yeah,
And that's
that-
what I
that building
told
hit
him.
by
I
a
said,
tornado.
to a tornado or a fire, you need to have,
They die with the building.
they don't die, but that's the problem. They
So
don't.
anyway,
That's the problem, they don't. And that's why you need to make sure that you have the right kind of equipment there that takes care of keeping those critters contained, so that we don't expose the citizens to them, even in the cases of those kind of disasters. So that, I was very clear with him about that, and that's kind of where I left it with him. He was gonna send me something on the email, but I haven't seen one come through yet. so.
ugh. I don't want you sending me none.
So, we got a business who wants to expand.
I get the
I think
marketing,
we need to look at it.
I get the marketing aspect. I mean, that would be a tremendous attraction for him, to have there are people who would want to go and see that, and of course, with
You're
them
not
coming
gonna
to see
take the kids, are
those,
you?
the more likely they are to buy
Oh,
some
God.
merchandise from them too.
Yeah.
So,
That's right.
even though these are not for sale, okay? I know that.
Hey, this is so much cooler than Derby's fake dinosaur park.
Okay, Elsa and I both have said something we should not have said. Tristan, strike those last 2 things from the record. But we'll,
We're gonna have to bring the clock back.
yeah. Yeah, no, that just tells me we've.
Well,
been here
one
long.
good thing about it is I don't have to go there.
No, and that's just it, But, yeah.
Yeah, I saw we
Again,
brought
that-
the National Night Out. It was cool.
Yeah, not a business that I would get all super excited about, but we've got a businessman who wants to expand a business who will bring people and revenue to the city, and I think we need to look at it.
And we need to show the community that we support our businesses.
Yes.
So that's how you
Yep.
get more businesses here.
Absolutely.
Good for you.
So,
No
Right.
snakes for me.
yeah, a lot of, today's been about being pro-growth and pro-business and promoting ourselves, so. I'm noticing a theme. I like how we're moving forward as a city.
I'm just
wanna-
surprised that Occidental rented it to him. And to
You
pay
You don't
that
wanna
kind
get
of
into
rent.
that on the on the.
Huh?
So you don't wanna get into those
Yeah,
details on
yeah.
the workshop.
But, no, I just do, before we adjourn, I just wanted to say I really appreciate the conversation. I look forward to our September workshop. And just, again, I look back over the last 3-4 months of this council where we've been able to kind of, for the most part, cohesively come up with a vision, a way that we want to move forward. And we each have a little, but I think we're moving the city in the right direction. I thank each and every one of you for your thoughts and insights, suggestions. I'm not going to get everything I want. Justin's not going to get everything he wants, and so on and so on. But I think we all can get what's needed to move us forward. So, all righty. Anything else come up?
Are we on the MSL with the Oak Creek lots? I'm sorry,
MLS.
MLS, wrong initials.
Not yet. Plat hasn't been filed yet, but we're
I
getting all
signed
the
it.
signatures. Yeah, you signed it, so,
Okay.
but very quickly.
At our last workshop, we talked just a little bit about getting future planning commission meetings on the website or the packets for people. Have we made any progress with that?
Yes. And that's a good point. With the new upgrades, that would allow us to also videotape the planning commission meetings and such if we wanted to.
Should be able to stream them live on the
And
website.
CCUA meetings too.
Yep. Yeah. Anything that's here, we'd be able to
Yeah.
stream those.
Yeah, because Park City has this equipment so that we could keep CCUA meetings taped too.
Yeah, but yes, so, but they, Stacy added a place where we can get agendas and such for the planning commission on the website as well.
Great.
So how soon do you think we'll actually start seeing those on the website, those planning commission agendas?
Is it out there now?
Yeah, I think there should be one for this week. I'm not sure where it's at.
They meet this week?
Yes, Thursday. Yep.
For some reason I thought it was last week, but okay.
They've never heard any more on that. Where is it? Oliver and, not Oliver, Harding Street, have they?
That's
That
on the
kind of fell
agenda for Thursday.
For this Thursday?
Yes, and then it'll be on your meeting next Tuesday.
Okay.
I know they may have still been working through getting the actual packet, but the agenda should be up
Okay.
there, which,
Well, that's a good start. I think we need the packet there too, but
and
I'm
the
assuming it'll be
packet,
in agendas.
yeah, and the packet issue would be like, okay, so the timing of the packet, and then just some other logistical things with getting some of the details of the full packet, because sometimes you have applications in there that, I think the general perception that, my predecessor said that I kind of agree with, is you don't want to just automatically post that kind of material up there, because they'll have like some business information, private information that a petitioner may not want in that forum. So just making sure we sort through what would be appropriate to put publicly on the packet.
Are they
or
not
to
public
post.
records?
They are, but there's
Not
another
until
layer
they're-
of caution and redaction when someone comes to City Hall and requests a packet, than if we just automatically put it through.
That way it's not us
Okay.
saying, oh, here world, here is
Yeah.
company
Yeah.
A's
So there's
plans.
some of that, that's kind
Okay.
of, I think, we're still having to work through.
Okay.
But we understand your ultimate charge is to get as much information out there as possible.
Right.
So,
But they can put the minutes out there, only at the top they can put not amended, or
Not approved?
not approved.
Yeah, and the minutes, I mean, I think the minutes would be perfect to put up there. I would say put approved minutes up there because, That's just a cleaner way to do it.
But the way I understand it is that the developer is bringing another design, so the planning commission will have to
Yep.
come forward, so you get me. We'll see if they like it better than they did this time. All right, anything else?
Meeting next week.
Huh?
There might be another long meeting next week.
Starting to get some things on there.
Well, with what we've had in the past, if it runs true, I mean, we will have plenty of citizen input.
Yeah.
Right.
Does the planning commission meet before our next? They do.
They
Oh,
meet
yeah.
They meet on
Thursday.
Thursday.
That's right. So I was looking at my calendar in my
So
head.
the 21st may be long.
But don't they have a 14-day wait before they can send it to us?
Not in this case,
Oh.
not because of the way it got sent to them, remember?
Yeah. Okay.
All right, guys, let's get out of here. I'll see you next week.
Thank
right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Don't let the snakes get